Today we're going to be looking at Rodentia again, and so we're going to look at our last two suborders, which are Castoreomorpha and Myomorpha. For these two, the zygomasoteric condition are going to be variable, so make sure you are looking at what the zygomasoteric condition is for the families in each. So this is the start of suborder Castoreomorpha. The first family we have is family Castoridae, genus being Castor. So this is our Castor canadensis, or our beaver skin. On these skulls, note the Cyuronathus zygomasoteric condition, and note that the jaws also are Cyuronathus. The second family in suborder Castoreomorpha is Geomyidae. So we have one genus, Tomomyies, with three specimens. So this first one we have is Talpoides. The largest specimen we have here is Townsendii. And then the third species that we have here is Umbrinus. So I'll give you an overview look of the three species. And then we'll go into looking at the skull. So there are a few things about this skull. Note the Cyuronathus, the Cyuromorphous zygomasoteric condition. You can also note the size and placement of the infraorbital canals. And then the last thing to look at, and that is special in this genus, is that it kind of has grooved teeth, and the teeth are also kind of prismatic. The last family that we have in Castoreomorpha is family Heteromyidae. So there are two things that I will point out. The first being a skull condition to look at, which is that all of these specimens have a transverse infraorbital canal. And then on the skins, they all have fur-lined cheek pouches. So in our first genus, which is Dipodomes, we have our three species, the first one being Microps, the second one being Ermanii with the longest tail, and the third being Ordii. So it kind of has a more yellow coloration on its fur. Note that the tail of Ermanii also has a white tip, and it is more like fluffed than the others. And then there are also size differences between them all. The fur-lined cheek pouches, I'll try to show you. And so you can see it here a little bit. There's basically just an external flap, cheek flap, that is fur-lined. And so you can see this in all of the family Heteromyidae. So you can see the fur-lined cheek pouches there. Some of them are a little hard to tell, but they all do have them. And the last thing, on the skull is that the infraorbital canal is on the side of the rostrum, as you can see there. So the transverse infraorbital canal. And then it's got these super big enlarged auditory bulla. So that's how you tell the Dipodomes skull. We do not have a skin for the Microdipodops, But this skull that we have is a lot like the Diptomi skull we just saw. So it has those enlarged bulla, the transverse infraorbital canal, but it's a lot smaller than the other one. The size of like a thumbprint. Great. We just have a skin for this genus, which is Chaetodipus. So you can see the size there. The fur is coming off just a little bit, and so that's why it looks like that. But you can see the fur coloration, and you can see the size. The last genus that we have in family Heteromyidae is Perinathus, and so you can see, the size difference here. So we have species Longimembris being the smallest, and then Parvus being the larger Perinathus species that we have. And then we have a skull, which also has that infraorbital canal. The skull is kind of broken in the back, but it also has an enlarged auditory bulla, but not as big as the microdiptops and the diptomes. All right, moving on to suborder Myomorpha. The first family that we have is family Muridae. And the first specimen or genus that we have in this family is Radis. So this is our common rat. And then the second genus that we have is Mus, which is our common mouse. So we'll go over some of the skull characteristics for Radis. So you can see that myomorphous zygomasteric condition. You can also see that the infraorbital canal kind of like comes down into a narrow canal, or it's kind of like a teardrop shape. And then the Radis skull also, I don't know if you can see it, has these apparent temporal ridges. All right. The Mus skull is a lot smaller, but if I zoom in, you maybe can see that the infraorbital canal is shaped kind of in the same way that Radis is, a lot smaller. All right, still in Myomorpha, this is our second family and the biggest family in Myomorpha that we have represented, and this is Crisididae. And so there's lots of species in this, and so we're going to break it into subfamilies. It's also broken up into subfamilies in your package. The first subfamily that we're going to be looking at is Neotominae, with the first genus being Rhythrodontomes. So we'll give you a close-up of the fur. And then the next genus that we have in family Crisididae is Peromyscus. So we have 5 species for this genus. These two both being Maniculatus, this one being Crinitus, this is Californicus, and then this last one is Ermiacus. So we'll give a close-up of those again. Maniculatus, We'll give you some scale here. Cranidas, Californicus, and the last one is Ermiacus. The skull is pretty small. We'll see if I can focus on it. And the one thing to note is that Peromyscus has a really small coronoid process. The next genus that we have is Onychomys. This is our specimen, Onychomys leucogaster, I believe. And then we have our skull. And the jaw, which in comparison to the last jaw we saw, it has a much larger coronoid process. The last genus that we have in subfamily Neotominae is Neotoma. So we have two species, the first one being Lepipeda and the second one being Sinicera. Note the size difference, and then note that the tails have a difference in fluffiness. And then when we look at the skull, notice that the rostrum is a lot narrower than anything that we've seen. It's a lot larger than anything that we've seen in this subfamily thus far. The only one that it really looks like is Radis. Just know that the rostrum of Neotoma is narrower than Radis. And if you look at the teeth, they're tending towards prismatic, the premolars are. The next subfamily that we have in family Crescididae is Sigmodontinae. We have two genera, First one being Sigmodon. So this is our Sigmodon. The second genus being Oryzomys. So I'll give you a side by side. Note the color or fur difference.